All right, Mr. Sandelli, how are you?
Yes, sir. I'm doing great.
Wonderful.
Friday and good economic numbers this morning. So, pumped.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in the markets, as Mr. Tasman had referenced, and that's an exciting and encouraging thing for all of us, regardless of our participation. Right? It matters for all of
The
us.
unemployment numbers are improved. There's a lot of good things there. So we'll see. But it's not 4 o'clock yet, so we'll see.
still time to cause trouble, I'm sure.
That's right.
If you are not speaking, if you could mute your phone just for the sound benefit, and then we'll give opportunity for the market leaders and the participants to ask questions. If you would, just place it in the chat and I will call on you so that we don't have people speaking over each other. Not that you have to put the question, but just that you kind of raise your hand to say you have a question and I'll call you out. Ray, if we could just kick this off with a portion of, we want to make both an announcement and endorsement as market leaders for you as candidate of county commission. We also are working really hard to finish out some fundraising and make sure that people are aware of who you are and what you're committed to for the county, both what you have done in your time as county commissioner, as well as what you plan to do to bring us out of this economic slight downturn for the time being. But if you could just give a little background to who you are for those that might not know you.
Sure. I'll give you a little bit of background here, try not to bore you too much. I was born and raised in New Jersey, educated there, very close Italian family was all in the trades. It was wrong, and there was not a lot of room for interpretation. It was great. I had a passion for aviation for as long as I could remember. Built model airplanes, worked at airports, and after graduation, I headed off to Pensacola, Florida, went to OCS and went through flight training. And I was deployed 2 operational deployments. I did a training at sea on a carrier. It was a great experience. Oops, something flipped off here. Dan, can you still hear me?
Yes, I'm sorry. I've turned off my video because Blue Ridge does not have fantastic reception. So you can still be seen and heard. I'm just turning off my video.
Great. Okay, that's fine. Made 2 operational deployments to the Mediterranean, came back, took an instructor tour in Pensacola, and then I was fortunate enough to get selected as a member of the flight demonstration team, the Blue Angels, who I think some of you may know, and you saw they're doing a great tour around the country with the counterpart, the Thunderbirds, recently, as they honor our first responders. I decided to get out of the Navy only because I was single, but I wanted to have a family someday. I understood the challenges of a family in that, so I got out and was flying an airplane for some people in Pensacola. Met a Marine Corps A4 pilot on one of the trips, and he was with in real estate. And so I ended up joining CBRE, then Coldwell Banker in Seattle. It was great to see that city. We actually represented Microsoft at one time. Should have bought some stock. I watched that port city, had international trade, and watched the tech business flourish in that market. Also met my wife there, Jan, who've been married 35 years. Then moved to the dark side, to management, Cincinnati, Ohio. Took over that office, and we had 3 kids there. It was a very interesting place to be because I had been on the West Coast, I'd raised on the East Coast, and I was watching how the Midwest came together. It was an important time because the logistics were changing around the country. It was also the time of Vicky Woods and the Bengals, and so we had a lot of fun there. But I always wanted to get back to Florida. And in '95, the Tampa office opened, and raised my hand and came down. We had a great office there. Tampa, as most of you know, is an exciting city. It was involved in the Downtown Partnership, the Rotary Club, University of Florida's graduate program. And so, again, another learning experience. Things went very well for us there, and then they asked me to have responsibility for the state. Dan, I think I lost everything.
Ray, I can still hear you and see you. Can you hear me?
All right.
Yep, coming through well.
Okay. We're back. So anyhow, the asked me to have responsibility for state. So I had 7 offices and 600 or 700 people. The thing there was, it was a great opportunity to learn holistically the size of Florida, the diversity of Florida, the economics that drove the state. And so it was a great run. At 65, decided to step away. I guess that was we're supposed to do. Went up to Jersey for the summer. And then that's when Randy Mercer called me when I was on vacation and asked if I would come down and be associated with CRE. They had split off. Came down for supposedly a year, and that was 7 or 8 years ago. My wife told me I'd failed retirement the first time, and had a great run. These guys have been very good to me. I've enjoyed the market. We stayed here because of people like people on this call, and really fell in love with Southwest Florida. And then last summer, on vacation at the same place, I get a call from Governor DeSantis, and gave me a day to think about it. And I was honored to be called, honored to serve. And then my wife told me I'd failed retirement twice. And I've been in this seat now for the last 10 months. And I will tell you that it's exceeded my expectations for what it could be and hopefully what it will be.
That's fantastic. Great. Thank you very much. I think a lot of the problems are sitting probably with my sound. So I'm going to ask Gary and Randy to help out a little bit as we jump into this. I've got a question from Dave Wallace. So I'm going to ask Dave to unmute and ask his question.
First of all, Ray, good to see you.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Secondly, thank you for your service, sir.
Well, Dave told me when this happened, he said, this is a pretty big deal. I said, Dave will be fine. Dave, you're usually right. So thank you.
All right. And also thank you to Dan and Gary and everybody for putting this together. Obviously, we're down here in Collier County. Ray, you're going to be up in Lee County. The counties are somewhat inextricably joined at the hip. And while each county has their own unique strengths and weaknesses, we seem to be co-dependent on each other's success as we address the needs of our varying demographics. So my question, Ray, is as the Lee County Commissioner, which you're going to be, I'm sure you're aware of that, right?
Well,
right?
I'm hoping, Dave.
Yeah, okay. All right. Do you see the benefits to work? All right. Do you see the benefits to working closely with Collier County? And if so, what might be some of the ways that you might work with Collier County to make both counties stronger with your leadership?
Dave, first of all, I think the way you and I have talked a number of times in the way that I've been in business is that collaboration is always the best solution. And so, and I think there are ways that we're collaborating on the environmental side when it comes to that aspect of our life, which is very important in South Florida, and the business life. I think, at first, we kind of looked at it linear, Charlotte County, Lee, and Collier. And I think that still exists, and we're working that. I also think for Naples and Collier County, I would think we're seeing more activity to the west and maybe connectivity to the East Coast, which I think is beneficial to us. But John Talmadge is the head of our economic development group. He's a great guy. He deals with a guy named Wirtz, who is, I think, part of the Visitor Convention Bureau down in Collier County, and they talk on a regular basis. So I think when we look at it, there are some little bifurcation in the market. The centerpiece really, Southwest Florida, from my perspective, always revolves around the airport because we're changing, logistically there. However, there are people that want a Naples address, and you know that as well as anybody else. So we're looking at how we. When I was in Cincinnati, there was a group that came in called Triad, and they connected Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky. And they said, we don't really care where you go. We just want you to come to this area. And I think that's kind of the attitude that we have. We want you to come to this area. We want to bring you in, tell us what you need. And whether you go to Collier County, whether you go to Lee County or somewhere else, we'll help make it work for you. So we're trying not to be territorial by any means, but to see what the needs are of the client. And Dave, you know as well as anybody else, if you can satisfy the client, then they're your best representative, for how we're taken care of down here. I look at the whole thing. I look at Southwest Florida holistically, as I did when I ran Florida. Where do you need to be in Florida, and how do we work that out?
Great answer, Ray, and thank you so much. Thanks for remembering us. Look forward to your leadership.
Dave, thanks for your friendship. Okay.
Ray, thank you very much.
Sure.
would love to hear your take on how you manage growth and environment for our community.
Well, I have a competitor, and at a recent debate or something, he said his biggest concern was overcrowding. To me, what drives our market is jobs. People going to work. People going to work, and Dan, you and I have talked about this. People going to work with a sense of purpose, and people that are contributing, to our community. And when we welcome people to our community, as people welcome many of us who are on this call, you have to have the right communities. And I think instead of building a county or building a part of the geography of Southwest Florida, it's really building communities. And those communities are the right kind of homes. It's having, parks that people can enjoy. It's transportation that allows people to move from point to point. And it increases our intellectual capital. It drives innovation. And I think that's what we're trying to achieve. It's interesting if you look at the young people, they like density. They want to go downstairs and go to Chick-fil-A and Starbucks. Then they meet somebody, and then they're going to have a family, and they move out to the suburbs. So it's not one thing fits all, but I think it's a sense of community. People say, they grew up in New York. They didn't grow up in New York. They grew up maybe in, a part of New York. That was their community within the larger geography. And that's the same thing here. What's your community within the larger geography of Southwest Florida or Florida itself? So I like the fact that we can be ready to welcome people, make them feel welcome, give them options for the types of housing they have, make them feel like this is the right place to live.
It's awesome, Ray. I want to remind everybody that this is open to anybody's questions and comments. I apologize for my sound. Again, this is my poor location in Blue Ridge here. Ray, there are a lot of awesome universities and education facilities in Southwest Florida. How do we continue to help them thrive so that we can provide for the right type of employment base?
Well, you have to have. It's interesting to see Dan in this last round. We had people that were stepping outside of their comfort zone on what they do traditionally to innovate, to create things such as masks and PPE and so on and so forth. Companies that you wouldn't have thought of along those lines, which one I think has created a whole market for other opportunities. But I think the fact that once you have something that drives innovation, drives thought. Obviously, we have some very good universities here. I think the fact that, for instance, if you take Florida Gulf Coast and their water school, it's a little bit ahead of its time in one respect, but it's going to drive innovation. It's going to drive participation. We're doing through the county, we've got 2 or 3 programs going that have to do with source testing. The best thing to me about that is we're going to find out what that is and we're going to work on that. But we've got young people involved. And when young people are involved, it creates that sense of purpose, which I referred to earlier, but it gets them engaged. I always told you, if you like where you wake up in the morning, you're going to engage differently in the community. When I went to Seattle, it's a beautiful city. But the first summer it was 55 degrees and raining out in June. I went, I'm not sure about this. I like palm trees and beaches and so on and so forth. And when you like where you wake up, you engage differently because you have a long-term view of your community. Doesn't mean you stay here forever, but I think that's the universities who engage the young people. And I'm going to put a shout out here. I was with Mike Martin the other day. They're wrestling with what their classes are going to look like this coming year, how big they're going to be. A lot of these students need jobs, in order to come to school. So I would ask you on this call here, for those of you that are looking to employ somebody, please think of the university. Please reach out to President Martin. And if you've got an opportunity, it's going to help all of us. And Dan, I'll ask one more thing. I think that the way we've had to go to school this past year, I think has accelerated opportunity. We've got young kids at almost every age that are on iPads now, that are learning remotely. So this was almost forced in some ways, but they're learning to work and integrate, electronically. I think it's a good thing. And here's where I think you and I talked about this, Dan. if somebody was coming down here and they needed a second job, maybe it was only retail for, 12 or, $15 an hour. If they know they can come down here and put somebody on the ground and work remotely, and it's going to work because now we've been kind of forced into it, I think there's an opportunity there for, again, to increase opportunities here in the Southwest Florida market.
Ray, thank you. Thank you much for your service, and you and I have had a great relationship for almost 23 years now. One of the things that
So you understand anyway why I'm excited about it, so I'll try to slow it down a little bit.
we all had dark hair at that time. One of the things that helps me realize the value of your being on the county commission is something you alluded to earlier, and that is your relationship with a lot of the leadership in Florida. Those brokers that used to work for you in Tampa and all across Florida are now in leadership positions in other major brokerage firms. You know a lot of the principals in the cities. You've served a lot in Hillsborough County and in Tampa. So you bring a very unique perspective to the Lee County Commission in so much as you're not a career politician. You've actually walked the walk, and that's very beneficial for everyone, regardless of what business you could be in at this particular time. How do we attract more businesses other than sunshine and great beaches? We had a pretty good run at doing that when there were economic incentives and state grants and those kind of buckets of money, and we attracted some awfully good companies, built some good product, and really invigorated Southwest Florida. How do you envision in the next 5 years us getting back to the level of encouraging people to come to the market for all the good business reasons rather than just quality of life?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, when I go back to Tampa, because I spent a lot of years there and I watched it grow. Tampa, in a lot of ways, was kind of lackluster, okay? And so what happened there was they were creating an environment. When I say an environment, I'm talking about a geographical environment that involved the schools, the geography itself, what they did with downtown. And the other thing is that they cooperated, and it goes back to what Dave was saying before. We started talking to Pinellas County. I mean, there was a divide there that didn't work. And so I think that when you have a sense of cooperation, people bring different things to the table. I think that helps bring the whole piece together. The second thing is, it's interesting. I was with John Talmadge this morning for actually 2 conference calls, and we are inundated right now with interest from outside this market. We've got about 2 million square feet of industrial site selections in final form almost, okay? So that's going to be a big driver for us. And, you have to be ready. The airport is an critical part of who we are. And so you start looking at those elements that bring people here. I think the logistical platform, that's going to be Southwest Florida is going to be a very important part of that. And so you look at those kind of pieces, and then you see how you market those and sell those as a strength within this market. Now, we're seeing a lot of interest, obviously, as I'm sure you might expect, in a couple different ways. People are moving here because they see it as a financial advantage to come to Florida. We all know those reasons. You guys know it as well as anybody. So that's one reason. Second reason is, but they've got to have something to come to. Second thing is, you're seeing firms not only from the tri-state area because of COVID-19, we're getting a lot of interest from the hotspots, within Florida itself. So people are saying, look, I want to go to Florida. I may not want to go to the East Coast because of the density and the inertia up here there. I think we have people within Florida itself looking at South Florida as an alternative because they see the good things that we've done as a community over here. And so what's important to that is these are not just people at the higher end of the age group, these are young people that want to raise a family, and they want to be safe. They want to have the right kind of opportunity. They want to have the right kind of housing. So nothing is detached. Everything is connected. How we package that, how we bring it together, and I've seen it happen most clearly probably in Tampa. And I think one of the reasons I stayed down here, Randy, is the fact that I see that same opportunity here. I see a great airport. I see a great way of life. I see the basis of good companies down here. And I see the interest that's continuing to drive people here for their own reasons. Our responsibility is to put the pieces together to make sure we're telling the right story.
Ray, this is Gary.
Gary.
Dan Oberski, audio issues, he asked me to step in. We have several questions, if it's okay. I'm going to kind of go through
Sure.
some of them. First, Adam Palmer has a question regarding economic development.
Yeah, hey Ray, nice to see you.
Yeah,
for everything. Similar topic to what you just kind of covered. So I put that in before Randy asked that. But on the market leaders call last week, I kind of talked about to the others on the call that I had the opportunity to look through a slide deck from a prominent national employer. And in one of the sections that they were talking about rephasing the reentry, there was a section in there that said, consider phasing new site openings across geographies, starting with lower risk market. And so you kind of spoke to, some of that interest already there. I'm kind of curious, how important is it for us to focus on being perceived as one of those lower risk markets? We did have a pretty big spike in cases earlier on this week, and is there strategies on making sure that we remain perceived as a non-hotspot? And then beyond that, are there any specific ideas that you have on how to lure some of these employers to the area outside of some of those obvious points we have? Is there another fund that could be tapped into for monetary incentives, or what other ideas that you might have in that capacity?
Well, I have a sister who lives in Connecticut, and we talk often. She can't get out of there fast enough, for the reasons that we all reason that people are moving to Southwest Florida. I think a couple of things come to mind. One is the fact that they're still stuck with the leadership up there where she is tremendously frustrated. They're also stuck in a high tax environment, which they can't wait to get out of. So that is the reason that we're all comfortable with moving here. I think the second thing is that we have to, I don't think we create markets, Adam. I think we respond in a lot of ways. When you talk about what drives a market, we bought a company one time called Torto Wheaton, a long, long time ago. And what they said, if you understand the economic drivers of the market, then you can really address the need. So if we understand what drives our market, and this group probably knows as well as anything else, why are people coming here? And so somebody said, you listen well, you have empathy, then you come up with the answer. I think people are coming here for a variety of reasons. Economics is always important to all of us. But if you look at wage scales, people don't always say that it's wages, it's quality of life. It's an overused term we sometimes take for granted. But I think that's going to be incredibly important, for the next generation. For us, we're pretty set in our ways. What can we look at when Hertz came down here, for instance? That group that was young, yeah, we'll come down here because we want to go to Florida. The older group, well, we're going to retire. It was that group in the middle that you want to capture. And that group in the middle, was struggling with the fact that they couldn't find that second tier of jobs. That's why I go back to what I said earlier. Because we're working remotely now, I think we have an opportunity to capture that. I think flexibility for those that are attracted to this market is being incredibly important. I don't think we have to be at the top end, from a wage perspective. It's a package deal. I think the other thing too is that I, like all of us, we're always talking to somebody in a market. What works in Orlando and what doesn't work in Orlando? How do we solve that problem? What works in Dade and Broward County and what doesn't work? And when you look at the geography, it doesn't take much. And we're seeing more and more people that are living one place and working in the other. So it's connectivity. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I mean, to me, opportunity doesn't happen sitting at the desk. Opportunity goes to talking on the phone, talking to markets, talking to people that are new to the marketplace. Things don't usually emanate here. Things emanate somewhere else. So if I'm talking to somebody, whether it's Texas, Ohio, and we all belong to different platforms and everything, I'm figuring out why people are moving from there and where they're moving from, and why they move there and is their next step here. So sometimes it's linear.
Ray, thanks for that great. We have Dan Miller had a question about quality of life. Dan, would you like to go ahead, or would you like me to ask it? Wasn't sure.
Yes, thank you. Ray, first off, thank you for your willingness to serve. I trust your leadership ability, and I'm very thankful you're in that position. A question that I think you'll have to prepare for in this campaign is, so how will you maintain the quality of life that all of us found so overwhelmingly attractive, knowing that the growth is coming? There will be a growth surge in Southwest Florida because of all of the reasons that have been described. And one of the things that I think your opponents will utilize against you is that will potentially erode quality of life. I don't think that's a necessity, but I think it's a question you'll have to prepare for. So with that, how would you respond to that question to others?
First of all, nice set of polls from Becky there. It's pretty cool. Look, people are coming here, and we're not going to build a wall, and so people are coming here, and I think the first thing is you have to have an attitude of welcoming people here, as opposed to keeping people away. You're not, people are coming, and our responsibility is to adapt to that, and that's the most important thing. People want to come to like an environment. I think that there are changes that are going on. Our responsibility is to put an infrastructure in place that allows us to keep mobile, but that's always tough to keep that infrastructure ahead of growth itself. I'll give you a good example though. There was a recent development built off the place, in the south, off of Corkscrew. But if you look at that development, there was a great example of taking trade-offs with density to putting the land away forever. Taking consideration for the flowways, the animal trafficking, and so on and so forth in there, so animals can move. And if you go out there, I was out there with the Audubon Society. I was out there with Fish and Wildlife. They were ecstatic about what they saw because this was a combination of increasing density in one area, but leaving a beautiful, beautiful open area that would be put away forever. And so it can be done. And look, I know where the competition is going to come from, and you have a choice. You can either raise taxes and make it very expensive to live here and create that kind of environment. I think that's going to be very difficult to do when people want to come to the state. So, be welcoming in what you do.
Thanks, Ray. Ray, Bruce, question for you.
Yep.
Bruce, you're on mute.
All right, how's that?
Good. Hey, Bruce.
Okay, Ray, I got a question. We've all been asking questions, assuming that August 18th goes in your favor. Now, let me ask a practical question. What do you need for us to do to be sure that that occurs?
Well, I think there's a couple things. The thing that I'm trying to earn is your trust. And with that trust comes a vote. That's the most important thing to me. In order to be successful in this campaign, though, there's no question I need financial support. This arena is new to me in that way. But the financial support allows us to get the messaging out that people will hear, to associate my name, with that seat. I'll tell you, I'm just working at that as hard as I can, and I love the work. There's an aspect to this, and that's to be respected as an individual, be respected as the Lee County Commission, to work cooperatively with the mayors, and I can do so much of that. But to the average voter, it's going to become name recognition. That translates into financial support, and whatever good things you can say about me.
Okay, well, I'm gonna, you and Terry have been working on it, but I'll tell you, I think every one of us have the responsibility to raise enough money so that all the good things we had heard earlier will come to pass. So you can count on me, and Terry knows it, to do what we can do to make that happen. And I believe everybody on this call will do the same thing.
Thank you, Bruce.
That's a great comment, and thanks for bringing that up. Just so you know, part of our organization of this meeting was a very strong financial commitment from the market leader brokers that participate in this group that Dan Oberski organized. So I can tell you that I know firsthand that you have in the people in this group and many people listening that Ray has our support, and we have committed not only financial support to Ray, but also to help raise money from other people to help drive this campaign for him. So thank you for bringing that up, Bruce. Ray, I have a question that I actually have several questions, but I'm trying to think of the one that I think is most relevant right now. And that is regarding the funds that the county got from the CARES Act. I think that I've started to read that the county is getting accolades, and the leadership at the board is getting a lot of accolades from the way that this money is being invested. And I think it's important that we talk about it as investing this money versus just handing it out. And I was wondering if you could give us kind of your philosophical view of how the board and how you want the board to look at that, but also what is it that's going to make it an investment versus just a gift?
Well, there have been a number of different programs that came down since the president signed originally, the $2 billion plus program. But the piece you're talking about right now is the CARES program, and that was about 135 million. And here's what's interesting about that: that came to us very quickly with really not a lot of guidance. About 30 days ago. Okay. First thing we did was we sat down and said, okay, where are the needs? We broke it down into categories. One was, what are individual needs? Okay, what's the needs of the small business community, and how do we help them? And then, the PPE requirement. What's that going to be when we first got this money, and what was going to be as we continued to open up and we had things like elective surgery coming out. So we knew there was going to be some additional needs there. Then we had childcare, and that was the basis of that. And so when we looked at that, there was a lot of different aspects, a lot of moving parts. But the thing I think it came down to, Gary, was the fact that we had people that wanted to go back to work. They wanted purpose, okay? How do we prepare and how do we help those people get ready to go back to work? If they know they have a roof over their head, which means that their rent's going to be paid, or the mortgage is going to be paid, utilities are going to be paid, and they have childcare available to them, then they go back to work in the right frame of mind. And that's good for them as an employee, and that's very good for the employer itself. So I was sitting home after the first meeting and over the weekend. And the other thing is, and I think as many of you have done, we've all been out and stood in line and handed out groceries and so on and so forth. You saw the incredible need, for food. And so I went back at the second meeting and I said, look, what I'd like to do is I want to augment childcare and I want to augment the PPE thing, because those are changing. I'd like to make a separate line item, for food supply. And I want to put $3 million in that. And the other commissioners were gracious enough to approve that. So we went from $50 million on this first part to $57 million. We also have reserves, and we have another piece that we'll put in place. But again, I think it all revolved around, it wasn't help in the sense of just a handout. It was a help to strengthen the individuals, our people that have been hurt and they, still hurting, and get them ready to go back to work, so that it's good for them and it's good for the employer.
So I want to encourage everybody watching the comments over on the chat. And I just want to encourage everybody, if you have questions, please let me know so I can call on you. In the meantime, there's an issue that is very, very near and dear to all of us. And we saw what happened in the past when the Board of County Commissioners probably kept the impact fees too high too long, and what it did to our lifeblood, which is the real estate construction and finance industry in Southwest Florida. Can you speak to us about your philosophy about how to manage the impact fees discussion through the recovery period, and where you would like to see us be as it relates to impact fee revenue for the county?
Okay, you break up a little bit, Gary, but I think I got most of that. The first thing is, you know, at the last downturn, you know, and that decision was long before, you know, I was here. But I think it happened for the right reasons. And it happened for two reasons. I've gotten into this over the last, you know, number of months. One was, how do we keep an industry that is vital to who we are within this area? And that's the construction business. How do we keep those people employed? How do we keep them building product? And the other part was, how do we make homes affordable? Okay. And so I think it was put in place, you know, and I know people took some heat for that, but fundamentally, I think it was sound. And so that there's two pieces to it, as you well know. One is the fee itself, and the other is, you know, the recovery rate. Okay. And if the fee is set every 5 years, so that's indisputable. The question then goes to what kind of rate do you want to cover? Now, we only cover the unincorporated area, so that's set for that. But if you live in Estero, for instance, they collect 100%. They can do whatever that they want. But if you let's just say the average savings, and we'll use a number, $6,000 or $7,000. If you take a house that's worth $160,000, $170,000, and you burden that, you know, because you add $6,000 or $7,000 of impact fees, that could be the make or break of somebody affording that home. Now, if you live behind a gate and you're talking about a $500,000 house, maybe it's inconsequential there. As a county commissioner, I have to think about everybody in Lee County, not just certain communities or not certain, you know, economic stratas and stuff like that. So I'm looking for the fact that we can make housing affordable and we can keep our people here in our industry healthy. Because again, we'll go back to where we started. It's all connected. People are coming here. We need to build. We need to look at how we build better. And I think our builders have done a great job of looking at how they adapt, you know, to the kind of product they're putting on the marketplace. So, you know, impact fees worked in, and you know what? Guess what? I think it's going to work in this environment right now. It's the same type of environment in a lot of ways. So, you know, I think it was a good idea then. I think it was, and it's serving us well now.
No, I agree with you. I've seen what happened to our economy and quality of life in this area in a high growth time frame after those impact fees were back down a little bit. I think that everybody on this call would agree that it's a critical component of our future growth.
Hey, let me ask you one thing, Gary. The other thing too is, when you look at impact fees as a piece of our budget, we've had a balanced budget for 7 years in Lee County, a balanced budget and reserves. You know, so we have a healthy, well-founded economy that allows us to bond if we need to bond. You know, and that didn't just happen. You know, 8 years ago, 9 years ago, we were carrying a deficit of $37 million. You know, that's not the way you want to do business. You know, I think the responsibility is to use taxpayers' money wisely. I think it was done, and I think it's proven out in the good times and the difficult times. That's the bottom line.
I want to shift gears for a second, because quality of life is something that we've all talked about. And I think smart economic development is different than just, you know, paving the whole landscape like they have on the East Coast. Having been involved at the beginning, when being on the board of 2020 and seeing the great work that was done, I'm just wondering, can you speak to your idea of the balancing economic growth with environmental sustainability?
Sure. I think the 2020 program is vitally important to who we are. I think every piece that was brought during at least my tenure, and I think for going back a little bit, I think have all been improved. We're looking at the 2020 program a little bit differently in the fact that if we're going to buy this green space and we're going to incorporate it into our communities. We'll go back to the community piece again. Let's have access to that. We just don't want to drive by a stand of trees and go, "Wow, it's green space. That's pretty good." No, let's make sure that one, there's a maintenance component of that. We've got to provide for that. But the second, the more that you can make that green space a part of everybody's life. I had some of the greatest parks I've ever experienced throughout my different stays in the country. Up in Tampa, Flywoods Park, my son and I would go out there and ride forever, you know. And it was quiet. It was between 75 and Bruce B. Downs. And the way it was built and the access it had, you could go back to, you couldn't hear a sound. So it just shows you that green space could be integrated into communities and you can enjoy it. So we have a great fund. It gets replenished. And we're also looking at the fact of not just buying a piece or if it's presented to us, a standalone piece. We're looking to where we can, you know, aggregate that to existing green space. And so it becomes enlarged and becomes more enjoyable. But absolutely a great program.
Yeah, that was an original high value goal that we had when we set up the matrix to begin with, was trying to acquire lands for preservation that were adjacent to other lands for preservation. And it's a lot of the reason that you have some of the big acquisitions that have been made through the years with that.
And the Kuiper Preserve was a major commitment for all of us, you know, and it's a great legacy for Larry, but also the people that made it happen.
And Ray, Dan Oberski has a question. And Dan, if you can unmute, we'll let you ask the question. Otherwise, I don't know how your quality of sound. I'll ask the question for you.
I can try it, Gary. Ray, we live in a community with several incorporated cities. Lee County still has by far the largest budget. How do we keep consistency and unity and purpose to maintain what the goals are for Lee County as well as with the cities? So how do we keep that unity within those organizations?
Well, I think, Dan, you know, goals are achieved when people talk to one another. I will tell you that I was very pleased that when I first got into the seat, I had all of the mayors met with me, asked them all for a little bit of advice. Tell me about your community and tell me about us collectively as a whole. I know each one of them, and I talk to probably almost all of them every week. So that's one venue. The second thing is I have been out in every part of Lee County, so trying to understand the dynamics of that, what they're working with, what their challenges are, where we can help. I said the second thing now, let's go back recently when we had this COVID instance like that. There were calls every day between the county and the mayors, so that because things were changing that quickly. And so the interface, that drove a great sense of cooperation. I stated earlier that is that my perspective, and I think it's at the county, is to look holistically at who we are. You know, the challenges may be a little bit different if you're talking about Cape Coral versus Lehigh versus Bonita Springs. The fact of the matter is we're all people. We're all dealing with the same issues. And we should be able to learn from each other, and we should be able to share accordingly. So I think that we will succeed or we will fail based on the fact that we share with one another and that we exchange information and ideas, because the fit may be maybe not in Bonita Springs. Maybe the fit for the next opportunity is in fact in Lehigh Acres or vice versa. So,
Ray, that brings up a really good question about your contrast, if you would, between you and your competitor. I mean, I think that everybody believes that this is going to be a hard-fought race, and I think that the voters really need to understand what it is that you stand for and what is it that you're going to do for us that's different and better than your competitor is suggesting.
Well, I think that my strength has always been that I have a certain base of conservative values. And I think that's the way I was raised. That's the way I try to communicate, try to deal with people. That's the first thing. I always speak for myself. I won't speak for the competitor. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the ability to go out outside of your little comfort zone, okay, and understand. I mean, I've stood in line at food lines, throughout the county, so on and so forth. But I'm also I'm a businessman. I understand that business itself. I had responsibility for the state of Florida. I understand the state for the strengths that it was, the diversity of what it was, and how you bring those pieces together. I feel very strongly about what I bring to the table as far as a business understanding, but also a business understanding that goes down and how it affects people day to day. And that's what this county does. What we do day to day affects the county. I encourage, we've had some very interesting conversations, at the county from the diocese or from constituents. I like passion. I like people that are passionate about something. I want to hear that. I'm not set in my ways. I'm willing to listen. But if you're going to come to me, with an idea, a possible solution, and how we can get it, work out together. And I think the people that have worked with me in the past will say that's who I am, and I think that's important. This comes down to people. If you call my kids right now and say, "Give me one line that your dad taught you," they would say it's all about people. And that's what I believe in. And if we can care about people, if you want a great community. And we're not just caring about the industry we bring in and the jobs we provide. We have a whole element of our community that's still hurting, and that revolves around mental health, revolves around opioids, our veterans, and the need to take care of those that are somewhat disenfranchised. That's what makes a great community.
Good answer, Ray. Again, I'm going to encourage everybody to let me know if you want to ask questions. I do have one that's been kind of living in the back of my mind for a while, so I'll take the opportunity to ask this question. We're reading the headlines and what's going on. There is a big real estate there that creates a lot of economic development and a tremendous number of jobs. Can you give us your thoughts or any insight on where and how you think that is going to resolve itself? And is there anything that you would propose that you as a county can do to help?
Gary, that broke up quite a bit. Are we talking about the unrest that's going on and across the nation right now?
No, I'm sorry. I was talking about the world headquarters in Estero and their threat of, and actually I think they filed bankruptcy now. And what we can do to help them through that tough time, and what ideas you may have about how we can recover in the event that they move on. That's a lot of jobs, a lot of economic development.
Sure. It's been interesting because obviously Hertz filed for Chapter 11. I think it was last week. American Airlines was talking about letting a lot of employees go early. And then you wake up this morning and guess what? The market value of Hertz and American Airlines is substantially greater today than it was. I think we have to be careful about knee-jerk reactions to certain situations. Some of that stuff could occur. The better positioned we are as a healthy economy here will help people like Hertz or the airline survive. Boeing aircraft, for instance, went from $440 a share to $112. Okay, you can write them off. Okay, now it's back to $200 a share. Why? Because the product is good, the company is good. They stumbled, they made some mistakes, but they're coming back. There's no question in my mind that the rental car industry is going to change for a variety of reasons, whether it's the type of vehicle, whether it's public transportation, or whether it's another source. But there's always going to be a market, I think, certainly in the next 5-10 years for that. And so maybe it's not Hertz, maybe it's someone else that's going to fill that void. Let's take a look at, the airlines are suffering. Guess what happened? Frontier Airlines, who's one of the smaller players, just added 4 new routes to our airport. They're looking at the loss of potential routes and filling that. So there's always going to be an entrepreneur that is going to say, what is the situation? Where can I take advantage of that? Or can we move our own market? And that comes from, I'm on the port committee too. How do we treat it? We had a lot of conversations with our airport manager. How are we dealing in the difficult times with our airlines, our concessionaires, and everybody else, and make them feel that, hey, those guys stood by me in the difficult times, and we're going to repay it by coming back here. So again, it goes back to a culture that we're trying to create, and I don't want to overstate that, but that's the fact of the matter is, it's interesting. When I was on the Blues, we selected our own replacements. Why? A lot of people are very good at flying airplanes because the culture had to be right. And I will tell you that one of the things that has helped me this last 10 months has been the culture of the county. They're a great group of people with the right mindset. And I think that mindset translates to people we do business with.
Good answer. I think the underlying term that I heard resonating through your whole message was opportunity. And I think that everybody here believe that the business community and the populace in Lee County is looking for leaders that show us the opportunity in any situation, not just the problems that exist. And so thank you for that. I've got a question here regarding affordable housing. I know you addressed it earlier, and I was wondering if you could, Daniel Bursky is asking, if you could speak a little more about a vision or a strategy for maybe not necessarily affordable housing, but attainable housing. So we need to have a workforce that can afford to live here.
Sure. I said earlier, we need to look at, and I always liked, I think it was Randy Thabow's term, shelter, because it's a much broader term. But no, we do have to have housing, shelter at a variety of different needs, how we fill that. It was interesting in Tampa. The Tampa downtown, was void of residential. And as they started bringing that in, the question really became, where can we put affordable housing, in downtown? Well, once people feel that there's upside, they're going to go to where they can maximize, their price. What happened there is we took a look at the city itself, and there were parcels of ground, okay, that were in the city that were donated to the city as part of a legacy or so on and so forth. We don't know what materials are going to cost. We don't know what labor is going to cost, but what we can control is the cost of the ground. Once that cost of the ground is finite, you know what you're working with, then you can probably get to the end piece. And so what I would like to see is in certain areas is, can we afford, with the right price to control ground in the right areas to make that part of the equation for delivering housing that is affordable, regardless of what the space is. So I think that's where the government side and the private sector can come together and work together. That's usually how things happen. We've had some really good, out in the Heights area, 140 unit, development, single family. It's got a lake in the middle. It's going to be a great community. So there are people that are doing that with a lot of different ways to achieve that. I look at it more from a pure business sense and say, okay, what are the components of delivering that? One of those, those are the land, the cost of materials. I think that's one way to do it, and we need to address that sector. So
good. All good stuff, Ray. This is actually a statement, and I'm going to ask Randy Mercer to kind of help here. But I just want to kind of go on record as saying again that Ray, everybody on this has made a financial commitment to you and your campaign to keep you in office, to keep you driving that vision that you have for our growth and development and quality of life forward. We need everybody else to help. And the message I think that really has to go out there is we have a choice. We can go back to a strategy that we know didn't work, that caused housing prices to go up and taxes to go up and jobs to go away and population to go away, or we can take what's happening to us, make the best of it, create and maintain and manage our economic activities and our growth in a way that will be great for the next generation here. We can only do that by helping stay in office, and I encourage everybody, please, even though we know there's a very difficult financial time, we're all in positions where we're managing to a different reality than we did just a few months before. But it's important that wherever and whenever you can, to please continue to drive that funding that Ray needs to stay in office. And with that, I'd like to ask Randy if you have any closing comments?
Thanks, Gary, and thanks, Ray. I've known Ray longer than anyone on this call, and of the 400 or 500 people who will watch this segment, I can assure you that what you heard today from Ray Sandelli is the real Ray Sandelli. This is his personality. It's all about people. His thoughts, his responses, his actions are very measured and very thought out, and he really does try to consider every possible variable before he makes his decisions. It is a rare opportunity for Lee County to have this kind of practical, balanced leadership who has seen it in the state of Florida and who has lived it and participated it. We are so very fortunate to have a professional like Ray in the seat, and we need to get him reelected in August. This is going to be a primary race. So I would encourage everyone who watches this to go to raysandelli.com. There are plenty of ways to help in this campaign, be it yard signs, be it knocking on doors if that's still allowed, but we do need financial help. And so I'm going to ask everyone who is watching this down the road, please contribute to Ray Sandelli's campaign. It's raysandelli.com. He is going to be the best county commissioner for not only his district, but for the future of Lee County. It's raysandelli.com. What you see is what you get, and it's all about the people. So thank you, Ray, and thank you everyone today for participating in this great event. And hopefully it gives us a chance to get the message out to people that perhaps wouldn't have an ordinary opportunity. We always talk about the market, and I'm going to add one market statistic because we haven't talked about that. All of our managed properties in the office sector paid their rent for June by the 3rd of the month. So we are thrilled to death. We think that's starting to show some signs of green shoots popping up, and we hope all the other sectors do that too. We're very encouraged. I think part of it's because of the leadership of Ray Sandelli on the Lee County Commission. Thank you, Ray.
Thank you all
Randy,
very much. Ray, I echo Randy's sentiment, Gary's sentiment, and everybody on this call. Grateful for your service to date. Looking forward to another 4 years. And thank you for sharing your time with us today.
I appreciate all of your time. Thank you very much. There's nothing more important to me than to help Lee County holistically become the best we can be as a team and for every individual that's on this call and your families. So thank you very much.
Thank you all. Have a great day and great weekend.
Good job, Ray. Good job.